What did your journey through the military, pharmaceutical industry, and corporate America teach you the most?
Wow, yeah, it taught me who I am and who I'm not, really. I was able to see a lot of my strengths and weaknesses playing out, and there were aspects of each one of those um, careers, I guess you could call them, that really resonated with who I am on a very deep level, like in terms of leadership and how motivated and ambitious I am as, a woman. Um, yeah, and it also showed me who I wasn't. I'm not really a corporate type. I'm a very free spirit, so being in the military and questioning everything all the time drove other people crazy, and it drove me crazy, and so yeah, just really it's sort of trial and error, right? You kind of go into these different environments and it's like, do I fit? Do I fit? Do I fit? And it's all a step in the journey toward alignment, and really discovering who you are.
When I was researching about you, I would have never imagined that you were in the military. But then when I saw the picture um, of you, you were very young, right? When you started to go to the military, I
Yeah.
could see it. All of a sudden, it made sense. Like, wow, that was her at that time. And now she's a completely different person based on how you dress, how you style, how you present yourself. And this is so
Yeah.
beautiful how we can shape ourselves into different beings, right? We are not stuck or stiff, right, with one personality or with one way of
Mm,
living. And
yeah.
what interests me the most about this particular era that you've been part of, the military, what motivated you in the first place to go to the military? And how old were you when you made that decision?
Yeah. I was a baby, I was 17 years old. And honestly, the thing that motivated me was getting out of the house, moving out and being on my own. I had a pretty traumatic upbringing and a lot of upheaval and moving. And when I was really young, I just yearned so deeply to have control over my life, to create my own life, And I actually graduated from high school a year early so that I could join the military at 17 and move on with my life. And yeah, it was a big decision, but it was good. I was the youngest one in basic training. I remember being the youngest one, and in a lot of ways I was one of the most mature, most grown ones there, because of all I had been through. So yeah, it was a huge leap, but it was really necessary. Kind of funny to think of going into the military to get control over one's life because, they really control a lot of aspects of your life, but even still it was different. It was predictable.
The routine and the time frame that is given, right? I can fully understand what you're saying here, especially if I imagine one ways or another where family life can be enormously unpredictable, especially when you are a child. You have basically nothing to contribute, nothing to say, right? When parents make the decisions, they make the decisions, like you have to follow. And I can totally relate, as this can be so difficult. Um, I personally did not think about going to the military because I thought I was too weak. All my life, I thought I was the weakest person on this planet, and I would not be able to fight or even, God forbid, kill someone. Right? That would be very, very hard on
Oh
me.
yeah.
Um, but in some ways, I also looked for having more control over my life, right? And the notion of moving out as quickly as possible out of the house was one that was haunting me ever since I was 9 years old, right? And we moved from Asia to Germany, the very tumultuous times where I didn't know what was going on, right? And how to gain control of my life. And what was the most beautiful experience that you made in the military, though?
Oh, I mean, all the travel, I got to go a lot of really interesting places. I was in Korea, I was in Turkey. Turkey was probably at that time, the most exotic place I had ever been. I've done a little bit more traveling since then, but yeah, just yeah, the sense of adventure. I also learned a lot of really fascinating things. I studied my career in the military was satellite wideband. So it's communications, and you have to learn electronic principles, right? Like the underlying forces of nature that, create electricity and how that works through communication systems. And that's not something I would have learned if I hadn't been in the military. And yet, all of that knowledge has, in a very profound way, informed my understanding of God and nature and the way energy moves through our bodies and how we are all energetic beings, so yeah, going into the military was very, very expansive for me. I learned a lot, I saw a lot, I interacted with a lot of different types of people.
And then you still made the decision to not stay in the military, but leave the military and do something else. Now, what was going on in your head back then? The woman that made that decision.
I'm a very free spirit, and someone called me a free spirit, and I was like, what does that mean? I didn't really quite understand what it meant. But as I pondered it, it started to come into focus what was going on, and I was just tired of the grind. I was tired of having to answer to people about things that seemed silly to me. I was just tired of being under the thumb of control. I don't, just like when I wanted to get out of the house because I wanted to have control over my own life, I wanted to get out of the military so I could have control over my own life. And, at the time that chapter was finished, a big part of my motivation was also getting a college degree, and I got that. I got a business degree while I was in. And then once that was complete, my time was complete and it was time to move on.
And who would you say influenced you the most on your healing journey then? Was it at the time that you decided to go out of the military, or when did that exactly happen?
But yeah, no, it was 2008 when I got out. Now it's 2023, and the last 15 years since then, I would say the biggest influence was really my mother and her passing away in 2015. It was actually her and her death that really put me in a deep space of self-reflection. When your parent dies, especially like your same-sex parent, you face your own mortality. Why did this person die? What did they offer in the world? What did their life mean? You're trying to find meaning, and then you look at yourself. What am I doing here? What are my habits? How am I like my mother? How can I be better? And then also just witnessing myself in the first couple of years after her death and seeing, oh, I got this from her. I got that from her, and recognizing the ancestral trauma that had unfolded through my family line and had landed in my cells, and really becoming motivated to not waste my life, to really find my unique gifts, my purpose, my dharma, to break bad habits, to see my shadows, to just really be the best version of myself that I could be.
And then you went on and you got so many different certifications, which I find so beautiful, in integrative nutrition, Ayurvedic nutritionist. You are a women's circle facilitator. You are a creativity coach, yoga nidra facilitator, meditation, breath work, all the necessary things that would basically give you the foundation basically for real healing, not just band-aiding, with pills and all that stuff, but
Yeah.
finding real healing. And was it really your mother? Do I understand it right that your mother's passing inspired you to find that path of real healing? Because you could have gone in so many different directions if you wanted to just take control over your life, right? You could have done so many things, right? Even staying in that communication lane, right, with what you've done in the military, but yet you decided to go on a quite extreme 180 degrees almost, right, to find something that brings true healing. And for that you need to have not only courage, but there must be something so tremendously wrong in your life, or that you witness, that you don't want anymore in your life. So that's what I see for many, many people who are not going for the traditional Western medicine, right? But they are going for that path, which I celebrate. And this is like the meat of my show. people who are doing this type of work?
That's been my journey into wholeness. It's been getting the nutrition piece right. It's been getting the movement piece right. It's been getting the self-expression and the creativity piece right. The every single there are a lot of certifications. They all are what have helped me to come into wholeness. When my mom passed away in 2015, I was actually working in startups in Silicon Valley. So I had graduated from school. I actually ran an eco-friendly cleaning company for a number of years while I was living in Seattle. And with my business degree and the experience I had with entrepreneurship, I work as an operations manager. And when she died, I had this huge awakening. I was like, this isn't what I meant to be doing. This isn't who I am. And so I ended up going into a yoga teacher training, And actually I had already been making the moves to do the yoga teacher training. And she actually died while I was in the yoga teacher training. So everything was sort of happening while she passed, showed me that yoga was this incredible healing modality. It wasn't just a form of exercise. I got into it because it felt really aligned, and I loved doing yoga, and it would take me out of my mind and all of the mental processing I was doing all the time and bring me into my body, which embodiment has been a huge part of my journey. I was completely disembodied before my mother died. And her death it pulled me out of the clouds, back onto the earth, back into my body, back into this greater awareness of my life, a deeper rooted foundational type of awareness. And that was how the journey started. But what really became pivotal was a few years later, and this is something I've seen in my health coaching with clients, is we go through something extremely stressful, traumatic, someone dies, divorce, bankruptcy, whatever it is, and then we get sick. We get sick on the other side of it. And I ended up having some mysterious symptoms, went on for a few years. I'll tell you what the diagnosis was in a moment. But in the few years where I was trying to get answers as to what was going on with me in my body, I was seeking out alternative healthcare. I went to an integrative doctor. That was part of why I ended up doing integrative nutrition, and running a bunch of tests and finding out I had adrenal fatigue. That was another awakening was around adrenal fatigue. And I realized I had been in varying states of adrenal fatigue since I was 12 years old. But even that wasn't the thing that was ultimately wrong. I ended up I don't know if it was 2020 or 2021, I think it was 2020, discovering I had bladder cancer. And in that journey of discovery, that was when I decided to get the health coaching certificate and find out for myself, not even really about other people, find out for myself, what does real health look like? What does it mean? And I had no idea. I had no clue. I was doing the things that I thought were healthy. I was eating low calorie packaged meals because I didn't feel like I had time or energy to cook healthy food. And so I thought that was healthy. It was frozen, had vegetables. It was 300 calories. I'll take that. No, that's not healthy. It has no life force energy in it, So understanding really about food, about nutrition, about gut health, and putting these pieces together. I already had the yoga, and now it was the nutrition. And then I started getting into, neurolinguistic programming and how the mind works, right? And reprogramming, and all of these different modalities are all things that I had to jump into and experiment with in order to find myself.
What a beautiful journey, and at the same time scary journey as well, if you think about adrenal fatigue and you don't know what the symptoms mean, and you kind of struggle time and time again and doctors cannot help you, right? Because they are either focused on one specific area in the body, or they just send you away because they don't have the right pill for it, right? Or they give you the wrong pill, or they give you the right one but with a lot of negative effects, right? Who wants that? Like, this is the bravest journey that any person can take on, discovering something so scary like a sickness, whether it's cancer or adrenaline fatigue, and really take on the responsibility for your own health. I can
Yeah.
relate so much. I didn't have cancer or anything, thank God, till now. Like, I haven't been to a doctor the last decade at least, because I don't trust in that system. And at the same time, I knew that coming from Asia, knowing this kind of part of the world that operates on a bit different scale when it comes to medicine and healing, I knew that something was wrong with the Western system of doing things and healing people. And I knew it was not healing. It was, well, soon enough, I found out it was a business, right? It's all about earning money.
Yeah.
So me too, I went on that journey to find my own healing, even though I didn't have dramatic illnesses, but enough pain to go through certain symptoms and pain here and there again and again. And if you are hypersensitive, you will not deal with it for long, right? You either want to kill it with pills or with alcohol, with drugs or anything, or you really take responsibility and
Yeah.
then you start really working on yourself. And for me, there was only one option because I wanted to live. For a long time, I didn't want to live, but when I decided I wanted to, then it only
Mm.
had to be the most excellent ways of living. And it cannot be barely surviving. It cannot be in pain, right? It had to be the most excellent way of living and thriving. And so I'm fully in the boat with you here to not stop at nutrition, not stop at yoga, not stop at neurolinguistic programming, and but really explore the whole body. How does it really work on a full scale? Because we have the
Yeah.
capacity, right? If we stop limiting ourselves that we should be a specialist, right, for either area of the body, like we will limit ourselves so much. Why not go for the full blown knowledge that we are capable of actually realizing, right? And you even went further than that, right? You not only got all the certifications, you explored the whole body and what actual healing is, but you also took art as one of the mediums to heal yourself or to find a way back into yourself. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you discovered art as a healing medium and how do you use it today?
Yeah, absolutely. I've always been interested in art, and I never took an art class in high school or college or anything like that. It just never worked out that way. Different things were valued in my home life. So I would print things off of my computer and I would like cut them out and I would trace them and I would try to create images like in this kind of ad hoc way. And so that was always sort of happening already. But I think I actually did a plant medicine journey. I've done a few, but I did an ayahuasca journey, and a lot opened up after that. And that was also in 2015. And I just started painting in a different way that was coming from the inside out instead of the outside in, instead of tracing things and trying to like piece things together to create an image I saw somewhere or an idea that I had. It was coming from within, and my artwork started just become really animated. And I think that what art has shown me is it shows me who I am. It shows me who I am. You know what I mean? So it's like, what are the themes? What am I painting? What is showing up in the artwork? And what generally I've been painting, and I've painted a number of different things, but I paint the moon a lot. I paint strong feminine figures a lot. What does that show me? I use dark colors. I tend to do a lot of nighttime scenes, yet the quality of the art is it's very animated and seems very young and childlike and innocent. And so it's like, what does that juxtaposition mean? And so I look at my art and other people look at my art and they give me reflections. And it's like one man was looking at my art. We were going through, not this house, I have another place as well. And I have artwork everywhere. It covers the walls of this like 2,000 square foot home. There's a lot of art there. And we were walking through and he looked at me and he goes, "Wow, you are queen of the underworld." And I was
Mhm.
like, wow, because I'm very light, actually. I'm a very light, sunny, happy, cheerful person, but I can go so deep. as we're talking about here, right? Like to really excavate the skeletons that are hiding down in the shadows and pull them out and take a look at them, and I think it shows in the artwork, right? Like the nighttime scenes, yet these strong, powerful women, there's fire burning, in the forest, and there's the moon is showing. And what does the moon mean, right? That's all about the emotions. That's the internal world, right? It's the cyclical nature of being a woman on this earth and really exploring that, right? So artwork shows me who I am. It shows me my values and what I'm bringing to life in the world. It also it's a way for me to alchemize my pain into beauty. I've been through a lot. We haven't even touched on my childhood, and we don't need to because there's enough here in the last few years, wherever the conversation goes organically is fine, but there's so much there that needs alchemy. It needs to be turned into something beautiful, to be given meaning. That's why we're here, I believe. And so there's that aspect. And then I would say the final thing with my artwork is I set intentions through art. Pretty much all of my paintings that I have around have words underneath that are like what I'm calling in, the energies I'm calling in, and if they don't have words necessarily, then they have symbolism. So I can show you in a minute if you'd like. I have a painting right in front of me that I just did. It's a mandala, but it's based on the orbit of Venus. It's the rotational orbit of Venus. And I painted it while Venus was in Scorpio. Scorpio is the sign of transformation. And one of the values that I have, and one of the things I know that I'm here to do with my life, is to create beauty, to make the world a more beautiful place, to bring the darkness to light, and so I painted the Venusian orbit to really like concretize that for myself, to really like cement that, yes, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing with my life. I'm creating art, I'm creating beauty, I'm helping people, I'm guiding them toward wholeness, I'm sharing the word of health so that we can all live more fulfilling, happy lives.
I find it so amazing that here again you take the full journey, right? The full circle. You don't stop at, it feels like you don't feel limited by anything. You want to explore the full range and the full depth of your own soul. And that's like the most interesting journey that you can actually make as a human being, I feel. And what I find most beautiful that you said just now is bringing darkness to light, because
Mm.
there's also that what I try to do when I write music or when I create art, because it's so dark that I have experienced in as a child and also as an adult. I don't know where to put it, so to speak, right? I need a medium, not only one. Like that's so painful that I need multiple things where I can just pour it out, because the moment that we actually take the darkness and we put it into the light, it almost disappears because it is now in the light. And I think
Yeah.
with all the shame, regret, and all the horrible feelings that we get when we experience something horrible and we realize that might have been our own fault or our own responsibility, right? Even if it's something that we experienced as children, we put shame and blame onto ourselves. And it is so helpful, so healing, so transformative when you actually allow yourself to explore art, to explore music, sports, what have you, right? To bring that darkness into the light and heal yourself, even if other people might say, oh, you're not talented, right? Or this and that, right? To really give yourself and allow yourself to be a human being and to express yourself, because I believe we are born to be creative. And wherever I go, I try to motivate and inspire people to start the journey and not really look at how good you are or whether you have talent, which I don't believe anyway in, and there's no scientific proof of any of that, but really allow yourself to explore to the fullest. I love that you use symbolism, that you go so intricate in the symbols that you want to connect into a story. It's almost like you are creating a very specific memory that only you understand. And so you are reconnecting with
Mm.
yourself in a process, because it's not punctual, right? When we create art again and again, it's not like we are creating a memory of the same person that we are, but because of we are developing as people all the time, every day, right? You are kind of creating little blips of memories of the person that you were and that you are becoming. And this type of awareness is like the highest level, in my opinion, of self-development. Like reading books is amazing, is great. I love it. But as soon as you really find that bravery to go into art or music, you will discover the real you. I don't think there is
Yeah.
any other way. And of course, I want to see the art, and the audience wants to see the art.
I'll grab one that's right behind me that I painted. This was a few years ago now, but she's like my spirit animal, you could say, and I'll grab her real quick. So this is my Queen of Hearts. And she's a lioness, right? And she's fierce.
Oh, so fitting.
Yeah, she's got her crown on because she's a queen, of course, but her heart is open and colorful and expanding and radiating outward. And that's what I want to do. I want to really find my ground and really like I am a queen. You're a queen. We all are these divine beings, and it's a matter of claiming it. That's why I painted her. I actually didn't know why I painted her. She just showed up. Um, but yeah, she just literally, I painted the background and then I was like, I don't know, sometimes I just channel things. And it took me a while and I was looking at her and I was like, oh, because that's me, right? That's like my animal totem. That's who I aspire to be in the world, just this really open-hearted, sharing, divine woman, strong like a lioness. Then we've got, I love this one.
Oh,
Those are
that's
little
beautiful.
moonlights that I hung on it. But it's just a reminder. I painted that one when I wanted to be more visible, to increase my visibility, which I'm doing through things like this podcast. And at first I was going to paint the sun, but it just wasn't coming out right. And I was like, this isn't, because the sun is really visible and really shines like that Leo energy, and like the lion, the lioness. But then I realized, is that the kind of visibility I want? Or do I want the subtlety of the moon? Do I want to show up when it's time to show up, like the full moon?
Mhm.
Do I want to retreat when it's time to retreat, like the new moon, and go inward? So that's this. It's sort of my emotional totem, if you will. And then the Venus one that I was just talking about is here.
I love
And
it.
that's the actual orbit. Yeah, the sun's shining, so it's a little challenging, but that's the actual orbit of Venus with the Earth around the sun, which is so beautiful because it's like a five-petaled flower.
I really love that one.
So thanks for the show and tell. Yeah, it's a fun one.
Oh, so beautiful. And you also create poetry and you write, right? You don't stop at art. You don't stop at
I do.
healing modalities, right? You also write. You are a full artist, if you could say, a 360 artist. You allow yourself to really explore everything about yourself, and this is the most beautiful thing that you can do. I want to know
Yeah.
everything about your poetry, how you discovered this medium of expressing yourself, of finding yourself and connecting with yourself, and what it means to you, right? And also your book, of course, Spirit Bomb. What did it mean to you to write that book?
Yeah, I have it here. So there's the cover. That's one of my paintings. It's a double lotus with the unalome, which is a Buddhist symbol. Um, and the unalome represents the path of life, and I'll just really quickly explain. It's like we're spiraling into existence, And then we're here on our journey and it's back and forth and looping, right? And you're like, that's sort of us finding our way and dealing with the challenges of life. But then it straightens out. I don't know if you can see, straightens out into a straight line. And that's sort of like where we really start to know ourselves. And what do we know ourselves as? Obviously, there's the earthly version of Stephanie that's here right now that paints and does all of these things, but there's also this divine flow, this connection to something greater, to the divine consciousness that permeates everything, right? God, goddess, whatever you want to call it, great spirit. Um, and so that's the cover of the book, which actually relates to the poetry, right? So the poetry is that, just like the artwork too, but perhaps even more so the poetry is that connection to the divine. It is the most palpable, obvious connection that I have that lets me know it's real. It's real because words come through me from somewhere else. I'm not generating this stuff. It's coming from somewhere else. I'm channeling this stuff. And a lot of times it's, the subconscious mind, it's like doing all kinds of things in the background and we don't even know what's going on, right? But we've got all this trauma, right? At least I do. I believe we all do, right? I
And we
saw a
all
meme
do.
once that had a picture of Earth and it said Earth. We all do. It said Earth, a 3D trauma based learning center. And I was like,
Oh my
whoa,
God.
right? Like that's what we're all here doing. I know, we're learning from our trauma. And so, deep in the subconscious realms of my, spirit, my mind, got all this trauma, all these lived experiences. And then I've got all of the healing work in the background while I'm making my coffee in the morning and doing this and doing that. And then I take a shower and I'm in a state of no mind flow. And then the words come in. The words are coming in, and it's like this synthesis that's happening. It's like I've gotten this bigger and bigger. You were talking about feeling unlimited. I do feel unlimited. Earthly Stephanie, yeah, I do have blocks sometimes, but I genuinely believe that this life is a dream and we are creating everything in our existence. And so in the background, all of these things are synthesizing this bigger perspective, this expansiveness is happening, and it turns into poetry, and it just comes through, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It connects me to something much greater than myself.
But why poetry? Why
You
not
know,
writing
so
biographical? Why does it have to be poetry? What does it give you to write in that particular system, if you will?
we're all so different. We're like snowflakes. We've got these beautiful different imprints. And my soul was imprinted with poetry, whereas it sounds like yours was imprinted with music and maybe also poetry and maybe also, but we have things that we gravitate toward.
Hmm.
Like I would love to be a musician. I mean, yeah, let's add that into the repertoire. But so
Let's
far,
go.
my life hasn't taken me there. That maybe that's next. I don't know. But I did just sign up with a book coach to write my memoir next year, 2024. That's what I'm going to be doing, right?
I
So it
love
doesn't
that.
have to be poetry, but it has been. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited. But yeah, it's very cathartic writing, and it helps you move the energy, right, to release it. And yeah, just turning it into something beautiful that's beneficial to others, that has the energetic imprint of healing and wholeness.
My feeling is that when we write poetry, and I write songs in a very poetic system, so to speak, not a lot of rhyme, but still there's a system. My personal feeling is that I do this because I want control again, and you mentioned control as well, that you were seeking some type of control. And when we write poetry that has uh, a very concrete outline, if you will, right? The lines are all the same length, if you will. There's maybe rhyme, maybe there's no rhyme, but there is a limitation as to how you express yourself. But still, in the limitations that we find as poets, we try to squeeze in as much of life as we can, because we try
Mm,
to maybe break out of that limited system, but we use that system to actually squeeze out the best of us. And when you just freely write, which I also do, it gives you a completely different thing. It does not, you are not seeking control in the moment where you are writing biographical stuff, or you are writing fantasy stories or what have you, right? But as soon as you sit down and you write in a poetry way, you are seeking control in the most sense of how you could ever create control for your own mind, right? For your own expression.
Yeah, I mean, you're giving me a lot to think about. Oh, but yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't know that I've ever really thought about it much in those terms. It's just what I've been drawn to. But yeah, you're right. It's sort of like when we bring in limitation, it forces expansion. It's like the eye of the needle, like you pass through and then you open up, you know? So yeah, it's an interesting thought.
Now, what changed in you as a woman when you had your first child?
Whew. Well, I became one, first off. I was a little girl. I mean, yeah, I don't know how to explain it. I believe that somebody can become a woman without having a child. I don't think it takes a biological child to do that. But for me, it definitely, yeah, I was talking about grounding earlier when my mom passed away and being pulled into my body. I mean, gosh, talk about being pulled into your body when you're gestating new life, and especially the childbearing process, which I did, all natural, no drugs, with a midwife. Um, the most primal experience of my life, really touching in with my animal self. We're animals. These bodies, they're animals, and we're infused with spirit. So really touching in with that primal nature was fascinating. But I would say that really, you know, I'm a lot clearer. I'm a lot clearer on who I'm going to spend time with, how I'm going to spend time with them, who I am, what I want, what I'm here to do, what I stand for, having boundaries, having clarity, not putting up with BS. I
Hmm.
feel like it just made me stronger.
The BS part, especially, like you create boundaries you didn't even know you could create those, right? Or you needed those, right? Where before the children, like we are so free with our time, we give it to almost everyone, right? Because we are curious, we want to know things, we want to experience things, right? But once a child is there, it really reminds you of your limitations as a biological body, if you will. Especially if you have gone through a very difficult pregnancy or the birth giving process, right? You are reminded of um, the decay of the body, right? And the need for your child, right? How much it needs you actually, and how little other people actually need you. Where you really thought before, wow, they need me a lot, but in reality, no, they're not. The most needy person, in the best ways, of course, is the child. So we understand. I feel we understand time very differently once we have kids. Like almost have a different definition for time, for boundaries, for limitations, once again, because we see, at least that was in my experience when I had my kids, I saw how limitless they saw the world. Like the potential that they saw in anything that they have encountered or experienced or interacted with. I saw, like, we almost see 10 times the world when we have children compared to before having children. We only have our own perspective. But when we have kids, all of a sudden we have more and more perspectives to the same world. And we live the life through their perspective, which enriches our own experience so much. And we learn so much more.
Yeah, I'm just at the beginning of the journey. My daughter just turned 4, and so she's really now starting to be able to verbalize more. So I'm looking forward to more of what you're sharing right now and getting her perspective of the world. Yeah, she's a powerful being. My goodness. So it'll be interesting to see it unfold.
You showed us the moon, right? One of your paintings, and you do work with the moon also in health terms. And I'm curious to know, how does following the moon actually help the woman be more aligned with her cycle? How do you use it?
Yeah. So it depends on if a woman's cycle is matching up with the moon or not, right? So being aware of where the moon is at related to where you're at in your cycle. But usually I do very much pay attention to the actual moon, especially with my spiritual practices. But in terms of the menstrual cycle, it's on its own cycle, and it's really interesting to watch it. For me, I'll bleed sometimes with the new moon, sometimes with the full moon, and I'll get pulled. I'll see it. Oh, I'm getting pulled now toward the full moon, or oh, I'm getting pulled back to the new moon. It'll shift, but it's almost always I'm bleeding on one or the other. Um, but I track my cycle. I encourage all of the women that I work with to track their cycles for a number of reasons. One, perhaps the most obvious is, pregnancy and birth control. When we're taking hormones from a very young age, which I started taking birth control at a very young age because my stepmom put me on it. She was worried that something was going to happen. It messes with you, it messes with your hormones, it messes with your emotions. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a contributing factor in my adrenal fatigue, because our adrenals, that's all hormone based, you know. So it's literally altering our chemistry. And if we can have some form of birth control without having to actually take a pill that's altering us. And also, I have a girlfriend now who's really having a hard time with perimenopause. She believes it's from being on birth control for years and years and years. I mean, you're just not letting your body do what it naturally is designed to do. And for me personally, nature's design is the design. That is the design. I don't need to mess with it. It's perfect. Right. So, being able to track your cycle, if your cycle is regular, and not everybody has a regular cycle, although there are natural herbs and supplements people can take in order to regulate their cycle. It doesn't have to be birth control. When you do have a regular cycle, like for me, I'm very regular. I'm kind of between, 25 and 28, 29 days. There's like a 4-day wiggle room. But I know when I'm ovulating, there are apps now, right? Like I use Flow. I've got an app on my phone that tells me, okay, I'm likely to get pregnant on these days. So what do? I don't have sex. So I'm able to control, like my daughter was very intentional. I knew I was ovulating. That was when I wanted to have her. That was when we conceived her, right? I was able to conceive naturally based on my natural cycle, my first try, very easily, and I believe it's because I'm healthy. I'm hormonally healthy. My body is healthy. I've been taking care of myself. And so I was able to conceive when I wanted to conceive in a very intentional way, calling her in. And I've also been able to avoid pregnancy, for decades now by tracking my cycle. In addition to reproductive health, there is the issue of managing our energy. Like I was saying with the moon painting, when I showed it, it's a reminder, when do I want to be visible? I want to be visible when it's time to be visible, when I'm in my fullness, and I don't want to be visible when I'm inward and I'm retracting. And with relation to the cycle, that is, PMS, menstruation during those times. I don't need to be out partying. I don't need to be out doing interviews or whatever the case. Sometimes you can't avoid it. Sometimes life is life and you're doing certain things at certain times, whatever. But for the most part, I have control over my life. So for instance, I produce a lot of content online. I create videos, reels, YouTube videos, and I'm intentional about doing that during ovulation. Why? Well, I look better during ovulation. There's, scientific proof that our faces are more symmetrical. I'm clearer, my thinking is clearer, I'm sharper, and I'm better able to communicate. So for me, it makes sense to optimize my feminine cycle in such a way that helps me to be more successful in the world. And when I know I'm going to be menstruating and I get invited to a party, it's like, hey, just so you know, there's a 25% chance I'll be there. We'll see what happens. And if I'm not feeling it, I'm not feeling it. And I need to stay home and I need to journal, and I need to get clear about my intentions for the next cycle, right? Because that's when we're in a more reflective state. Also, what I love about PMS, a lot of women think it's a curse. To me, it's a gift because, oh my God, do I get clear or what? I was thinking, recently about the all before I started tracking my cycle. You know, I had many years where I was doing the conventional thing on the birth control, whatever, whatever. And all the relationships that I've ended and all the big fights that I've had, like they probably happened while I was PMSing. And thank God, because in that state of mind, like our mind changes. We're a different person when we're PMSing than when we're ovulating. And in that mindset, it's, oh, I'm not going to put up with this bull anymore. I'm not dealing with it. You have crossed a line. It is not okay. You know, I might be more allowing when I'm ovulating. Oh, okay, you ghosted me. All right, something happened. I forgive you, whatever, whatever. You do that to me while I'm PMSing. We're having a conversation. You know, we're going to talk about this. And so for me, it's a gift because it cuts out the BS. It helps me to stay aligned, you know? So I think appreciating our cycle and tracking it and knowing where we are, it's a game changer.
I absolutely love that you have opened up about this particular topic, because what I see a lot of young women, but also 30s, 40s women do nowadays a lot is buying into that uh, thing that they have been brainwashed with to show up even if it's uncomfortable. I
Mm,
personally hate that, right?
yeah,
Whenever I hear that, I dismiss the whole person, honestly, because number one, that person is not thinking about the difference between men and women. That person gives out advice to everyone, not giving any disclaimers that this advice only works for men because of their cycle and their
yeah,
hormonal system. And third, I will probably find another reason that will make it to the third. But what I love about it is that we need to change the narrative about how women should operate in this world. And it doesn't really matter, are you at home, a home and stay mom with your kids, right? Doesn't really matter. Or are you a businesswoman, a CEO, a go-getter, right? Doesn't really matter. You're still a woman. Or whether you are in the military even, right? You're still a woman.
yeah,
And I think we need to shift the entire humanity into accepting the differences between men and women when it comes to hormones, and allowing women finally to align all their actions and all their lifestyle, if you will, and work style to their cycle, because that's so important. If you want to harness the best out of the woman, please leave her alone in the cycle or in the time when she is PMSing, for example, right? Like, give her the opportunity to collect herself, give her the opportunity to collect her energy that she needs to then 10x the other time that she missed, so to speak. We are fully capable of expanding in massive ways when we are active, so to speak. And we need the allowance, and we need to allow that ourselves and create a type of lifestyle that would allow us to actually regress and actually not show up, right? In a world that tries to sell us the idea that we need to show up regardless, right? With
yeah,
fever, with PMS, with what have you. No, why would I? If I respect
yeah,
myself to the extent that I respect my own boundaries and my own cycle, why would I show up if I know exactly that I cannot show up as my best self? And even women are promoting this type of stuff because they have bought into this idea. So I love that you brought it up, and I fully support you on this. We need to change that type of narrative, because women will damage a lot of things for their own health. Just what you've mentioned, your adrenaline fatigue could have been one of the things that might have been caused by anything that you took for birth control, for example. I'm a big believer that birth control is literal death to women, and there are death cases based on birth control as well, on the pill and other things that might be a topic for another episode. But the medicinal remedies that women take for birth control and against their cycle is literal death. And I am not at all surprised that, especially in the Western countries, women are infertile. This is one of the reasons. There are many more. This is one of the reasons, because they take birth control and they're completely messing up their hormonal system. The body cannot work, just like you said, it cannot work in the most natural ways. And so many women struggle to have kids when this is the most natural and like the easiest way to be a woman, right? There should not be any struggle. And yet,
Yeah.
Elon Musk addressed this topic. In 20 years, we will have almost no kids, and like the balance between old and young will be so out of balance that there will be no going back. And I don't know if any of the listeners of this podcast or you know the amazing series, um, which name I just forgot, but it is about a woman that is living in a time where they are being captured to give birth to as many children as possible, because they have ruined the country so much. I think it takes place in the US, where they cannot have any children anymore. Most women are infertile. So the few left that are fertile are taken under horrible conditions to give birth to as many children as possible. They're basically slaves, right? So I don't know why I
Yeah.
forgot the name. I watched the whole series, but this is basically where we are going towards. And we need to paint a picture of a future that people understand. Why should you care about your cycle as a woman? Like, we need to paint them a clear picture of the potential future that they could be facing in during their lifetime. Maybe your daughter will face that. My daughter will face that exact time, right? So this needs to be addressed and thought about by every woman that is living nowadays.
I agree. You know that biblical phrase that the meek shall inherit the earth, the meek shall inherit the earth. Where I live here in Asheville, there are a lot of crunchy hippies, and they are not on birth control, and they're growing their own food, and they're living on the land, and they are having babies. Man, I know this is a very family friendly environment, and I'm surrounded by these people. And so I've thought about that phrase, and I think that's what's happening is all these people that are out of alignment with nature, they're going to extinct themselves. And these hippie crunchy types that are living close to the land, growing their own food, living in the most natural way possible, they're the ones that are going to inherit the earth. You know, they're the ones that are going to keep going. So for whatever that's worth, it's a source of inspiration for me anyway.
Unless AI stops them.
Well, yeah, I know. Let's hope not. I probably shouldn't even told the secret. We'll have to
Oh,
edit that out of the interview.
can you share a client success story that moved you the most, and why?
I guess I'll go with recent history. I've got a pretty transformational coaching client that I've just been working with. I spoke to her last week and she's in a really good place. But this is a woman who, mid 30s, recently divorced, very depressed, very, very depressed, struggling with her menstrual cycle. And yeah, just through working together, I have witnessed her, you know, sort of excavating her soul, right? Pulling herself together, making a lot of changes. She moved to a new environment, which is huge, right? Just it's like a breath of fresh air for the spirit. You know, cleaned up her eating, her period has returned, gotten into some different stress management techniques. She signed up for a yoga teacher training, and so she's doing that, right? Like she's feeding her spirit. She's doing things to feed her spirit. When I first started working with her, she literally would not give herself permission to stop grieving. It was like she felt stuck in order to get the most out of her experience of divorce, you know, and all of the things she was going through. And I just saw someone who was punishing herself, really quite literally punishing herself. You know, and we worked together in some different ways, and she started to see that she could make some changes and stop punishing herself and step out of that mental framework that she had put herself in. And a lot of that came through, we had some conversations and other people planting ideas in her mind about how she should be, about what her healing needs to look like, about what she needed to be dealing with and looking at. And instead of it coming from an internal place of who am I? What am I doing? What do I need to heal here? She was in a place of response as opposed to generation, you know? So witnessing her transformation and talking to her and hearing how yeah, happy and fulfilled she sounds is very rewarding for me.
I think most of the trauma that we experience and we become aware as adults most of the time, like in our 20s or maybe even 30s, we start to kind of see a bigger picture of ourselves. But I believe the majority of the trauma that we have collected in this um, body bag, if you will, we got it from our childhood, right? It really starts in our childhood,
Yeah.
and we cannot really protect ourselves, so to speak, as children from these different things that can really happen to us. And I see that all the time in my clients, for example, when they come to me for voice training. It is very, very obvious and prevalent that they develop certain vocal issues and vocal health issues based in childhood trauma.
Mm.
And that goes back to parenting. So it goes both ways. Like, you are discovering right now what type of trauma you have collected in your body, and at the same time, if you're a mom and you have little kids especially, right? Just had a wild discussion about this on Instagram with on someone's account who is giving parenting advice, right? And this is very, very important for parents to realize who have young children. Things you don't even mean as being bad, or you have been sold on the idea that this is the best way to parent your child, is actually extremely toxic and will ultimately lead to not what I uncover as a voice trainer, but also health coaches uncover that, right? Business coaches uncover that from a different perspective. Like, all the types of coaches that we find on this planet will uncover certain aspects of your trauma, right? That it all goes back to childhood trauma. And I don't know how you go about this in your practice, but maybe you can shed a little bit of light. Do you go into that time with your clients and unpack all of it, or do you go straight to the solutions that you have acquired in so many years of experience and expertise?
Totally depends on the person, right? So some people you don't really want to start triggering childhood stuff and they don't want to talk about it. They just want to know what to eat
Mm-hmm.
and how to move, you know. But I try to work in more subtle ways, right? So sometimes people will say things to me and I'll pause and I'll say, "Well, what makes you think that? Who told you that?" Well, you know, and then they pause and they think about it, and a lot of times it becomes really self-evident. You know what I mean? They're able to make the connections. I don't have to do it. They can do it. They know themselves better than anyone, right? So sometimes we are unpacking it, and sometimes we're doing the what is it, like nuts and tacks or tacks and bolts? I don't know. We're doing the like basic, food, movement, rest, all of the things that we need for good health. So it really depends on the person and how open they are. One of the nice things about being open-minded and having so many tools in the tool belt is being able to approach different things from different angles. So with the woman I was just referencing, she had a grounding in astrology. I have a grounding in astrology. So I was asking her, what's your sun sign? What's your moon sign? What's your rising sign? And I was speaking to her in terms of those energies. And I was like, oh, it sounds to me like your Sagittarius moon really wants to travel. And so she was able to say, yeah, that is who I am. That is what I want to do. That is what my spirit's calling for. And she did. So it really depends on the person. Not everybody's into astrology and they won't understand when I talk to them in terms of, their moon sign, right? But she did. So it just really depends on the person. I'm a very intuitive coach. It's where the person is at. I try to be present and meet them there.
Would you say that by excavating your own darkness through art, it gives you an advantage having experienced your own type and world of childhood trauma that you mentioned in the beginning of the interview. Does it help you to go in deeper realms with your clients, understand them better?
Absolutely. I think what it really does, the gift that I've really gotten from all of this is compassion, and not just compassion for them as an individual, but compassion for the human experience. This is not easy, what we're doing here. It can be. It can be light and happy and expansive and carefree. It can also be a total grind and a confusing, chaotic mess. It can be all of it. And so I think that just having that perspective allows me to hold a space of non-judgment and compassion with the client and allow them their process, whatever it looks like. And I really think my clients, well, I know they do. I mean, I have testimonials and feedback from people all the time that they feel safe with me. They don't feel judged. They can be their authentic selves, and it helps them discover who they are.
Yeah, and really turning the things that have maybe suppressed your own soul and create light out of it again, and create a solution for other people, so maybe that they don't have to go and struggle through the same realms, and be the light and helping hand. And I think what you said about safety and not feeling judged is one of the greatest gifts that you can give your clients or another person. Because without safety, as you said, they cannot really discover themselves, right? And be vulnerable with themselves in the presence of another human being, which I feel many humans feel have a big struggle around, right? Being vulnerable with yourself is just one level, right? You could be vulnerable with yourself, admitting to yourself all the mistakes that you've done, all the things that you've regretting, right? All the things, right? You could do that because nobody's watching or nobody's listening. But I think it's a whole different level if you are so confident with yourself and so much in love with yourself and self-caring yourself that you can actually be vulnerable with another person, that exudes that type of presence and creates that safe place where I can actually be myself and open up and start that journey of healing, because I don't think there is healing without a safe place. And this world makes it really difficult to find safe places. We gotta say that, right? That it's quite rare to find people who can create that type of space. Where can people find you to start that journey of uncovering their own trauma and things that they want to work with in their in the means of health and mindset?
Yeah, I'm very present on Facebook, Instagram. I have a YouTube channel. But perhaps the best way is my website is stephaniedelarose.com. And there's a little pop up like there is on a lot of sites where you can put your information in and get my newsletter. And that'll keep people informed on offerings, things I put out into the world. I also do a lot of retreats. I host yoga and nutrition retreats. And then, yeah, just, emailing me. You can just email me, hello@stephaniedelarose.com. Happy to engage. And yeah, pretty easy to find.
Of course, I will leave all the links in the description below to get in contact with Stephanie. And when I was researching your wellness sanctuary, I was reading the name on your website. It's Sacred Mountain Waters Wellness Sanctuary in the Blue Ridge Mountains near Asheville. Like this, alone the sound of it, right? Like made
Yeah.
me think like I need to go there. That's my place. It really sounds beautiful. It sounds like a little space that exudes the paradise that I might be looking for. Can you tell us more about the retreat, how it's run, what I could potentially get if I were interested as a client?
Oh, the retreat center, I cannot personally take credit for. It's my partner. It's his dream, his vision, his manifestation. Very proud of him and all that he's accomplished. I mean, it's incredible. But it's a 260-acre piece of land, which is enormous. It's an entire mountain valley.
Wow.
It stretches from the peak of a mountain to the end where two rivers meet on the property. So, there's water, there's mountains. It's pristine natural beauty. It's incredible. We also have sauna, hot tub, whole outdoor spa, outdoor shower. Love doing hot cold therapy between the sauna and getting into the creek. We also have a swimming pond, lots of hiking trails. In terms of my retreats, which by the way, if anyone's listening, we also do hold space for other people to come through and have their own retreats there. But in terms of the retreats that nutrition, I've started experimenting with other things. Last summer, I did a retreat with ecstatic dance, which was great. We did some intention setting. Generally, I do a detox retreat in the spring around Mother's Day. Mother's Day weekend is usually my first retreat of the year, and another one in October because spring and autumn time are really good times to detox. And so, yeah, I usually do 4 to 5 retreats a year. And they're just very restorative and very educational. I do a lot of workshops. Sometimes it'll be a workshop on Ayurveda, helping people to understand their dosha, their own unique nature and composition, and the foods that are good for them. I have taught a lot of cooking classes in the past, teaching people how to cook with whole foods, vegan diets. I'm not exclusively vegan, but the vegan diet is excellent for cleansing, and I switch my diet up. I'm a very intuitive eater. I don't write anything off. I go with what I feel like I need at the time. But the vegan diet is, I think, foundational and important to know how to cook in that way in terms of taking care of your long-term health, because there are absolutely periods of time where we need to be doing that and cleaning the body out. So yeah, the retreats cover a variety of topics, but there's always yoga. There's always the outdoor spa. There's always, comfortable accommodations in a beautiful, pristine, natural setting.
That sounds so beautiful. I will definitely check it out. I'm traveling for the past 2 years, and now I'm kind of collecting a network of people that specifically do retreats. So I'm very interested in furthering our conversation when it comes to this type of work that you do. Very beautiful. I love it. The way how you describe nature, and nature is one of the realms that is so foundational for healing. Point blank, period, right? So being in an environment that already creates the inspiration for healing is very necessary. Like, you can do retreats in different settings in the world, right? And they all have a place. But my personal favorite is the one that, if you talk about the space, right, that would give a person to go in and take the time to actually connect with themselves and see the relation between themselves and their surroundings, meaning the nature, and seeing what is actually based, all the systems, all the processes in the body that are based on nature, right? You will realize that once you put yourself actually into nature, right? And into nature surrounded by trees, that is most important. Trees and mountains. My personal belief, and science seems to support this, have a very unique energy to them that really fosters healing in a very specific way. But I don't want to go too much into detail. But just saying that I absolutely love that you also added the retreats part to your work, and I'm very curious and excited to connect more on that. Thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, for your story.
Thank you so much. I really appreciated this opportunity. I think this is my favorite podcast. We actually went deep. A lot of times I do these and we're just barely like floating on the surface. So thank you. I appreciate the depth that you brought today.